Archaeology became a real science only in the 19th century. It was in this century that major discoveries were made that determined the face of this historical discipline. In this video, you will see the cursed finds of archaeologists. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Roman ballista nuclei. In the late 1980s, several stone walls were discovered on the border between Israel and Syria. Ballista, a throwing machine from the time of the Roman Empire. With their help, at the beginning of our era, the ancient city of Gamla was destroyed. In total, 9,000 people died then. Some were killed, and some threw themselves into the gorge, preferring voluntary death to captivity. In 2015, an unidentified person left a bag in the courtyard of the Israel Museum. It contained 2 ballista balls and a note. These are ballista balls from Gamla. I stole them in July 1995 while excavating, and they brought me nothing but trouble. Please don't steal antiques. Relics of Pompeii. According to the legends, Pompeii was cursed by the gods after some of the holy places were destroyed by the Roman legionnaires. The current caretaker of Pompeii, Massimo Ossana, receives about 100 parcels a year, which contain relics stolen from here by tourists, pieces of mosaics or statues. Almost every parcel is accompanied by a letter that tells about the troubles faced by the thieves. One thief from Spain returned as many as 5 packages of artifacts, claiming that the curse befell his entire family. Ossana even created an exhibition of these items called What I Brought from Pompeii. Ring of Senician. Senician's ring was found in Britain in the late 1700s. It is very large, weighs 12 grams, has a peculiar design and an inscription in Latin. Senician, live in peace with God. A few decades later, an ancient clay tablet was found that was related to the ring. The inscription on it was made by a certain Roman named Sylvian, who complained to the god Nodens that his ring had been stolen by Senician. The tablet said, "He who bears the name of Senician will not have a single grain of health until he returns the ring to the temple of Nodens." To many, these details will sound familiar. Oxford University professor and aspiring author John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was intimately familiar with the story of the cursed ring and used it in his novel The Lord of the Rings. 1,500-year-old curse. The so Curse of the Dancer is written on a lead plate. The artifact dates back to the 6th century AD. This plate was found around the 1950s by a group of archaeologists from Italy in an ancient theater in what is now Israel. Only more than 60 years later, with the help of reflectance transformation imaging technology, Professor Attilio Mastrochinche was able to restore the text of the curse. The scientists photographed the artifact from different angles in different lighting conditions and then combined the pictures using the program. The curse in Greek was addressed to the famous dancer Mana, who performed at the theater of Caesarea. The offender called on the demons to send misfortune to the artist. Tie your feet together, prevent Mana from dancing, close her eyes, tie her hands and feet, which should be relaxed when Mana dances in the theater. Experts believe that the author of the curse was driven by hostility or competition for some kind of reward. It is noteworthy that the enemy asks for help from several gods, including Thoth, the ancient Egyptian god of magic and wisdom. He also asks for sky demons, air demons, earth demons, underworld demons, sea and river demons, spring demons to cause trouble for Mana. This curse tablet confirms that the Christianization of the Roman Empire did not stop the pernicious magical arts. On the contrary, they spread more and more and became more sophisticated. Maori whip. Captain James Reddy Clendon was one of the first European settlers in New Zealand. He promoted dialogue between the indigenous Maori people and the European colonialists, was the chairman of the first Bank of New Zealand and the first US consul in the country. The Clendon House Museum contains many items and artifacts, many of which once belonged to the Maori tribe. Apparently, the thief who once climbed into the museum did not know that all Maori artifacts bring a curse to those who mistreat them. He stole a Maori whip with a handle made from whalebone. The stolen thing returned to the museum a month later. It was personally handed over by a friend of the thief, saying that before that, the gates to hell had opened. All misfortunes fell upon him. The thief was never charged given that the whip returned and the thief had already been punished by some higher court. Carving from Egypt. An unknown person from Germany in 2004, during a trip to Egypt, broke off a piece of stone with carvings and hieroglyphs in the tomb. Soon the piece returned to its place, and only another person bought it, since the tomb raider had already died. Shortly after returning from the trip, the man was paralyzed, a fever set in, and a week later he died. The artifact was returned in the hope of freeing the soul of the deceased from the curse, as well as in order to save his family members from possible misfortunes. Stones from the Battle of Gettysburg. Like the caretaker of Pompeii, museum attendants at Gettysburg, USA, received dozens of parcels a year containing twigs, stones, and other memorabilia stolen from the site of the famous Battle of the Negro Liberation War. Parcels are accompanied by letters in which would-be thieves complain about the misfortunes that have fallen on them: injuries, illnesses, divorces. One souvenir lover lost his entire family, home, and went to prison for 9 years on false charges. Park rangers are now warning visitors, while you might want to take a little piece of history home, it's best to leave the relics where they are. Virginia Cemetery Tombstones. The cemetery in the mining town of Virginia City in Nevada, USA, was built in 1867, and then the stone tombstones began to disappear here. Local residents dragged them off to use household in their gardens and homes. However, there are persistent rumors in the town that the robbers and their descendants will then be sure to face misfortunes, from financial problems to death. Many return the gravestones stolen by their distant ancestors in the hope of good luck in business. Holy Grail of the Nazis. In 2001, a Bavarian diver found a pot made of 10.5 kilograms of gold at the bottom of the local lake Chiemsee, 70 kilometers east of Munich. The artifact had value in itself, but the researchers were confused by the coinage made in the style of Celtic counterparts 2,000 years ago. In particular, scientists were well aware of the so-called Gundestrup pot discovered in 1891 in the Danish peat box, a superbly preserved silver vessel with rich Celtic decoration. It has been dated to the first millennium BC. However, after the examination, it was found that the pot from Chiemsee was made relatively recently, more likely in the 1930s. Further, it turned out that a certain Alfred Knotz, a jeweler of the Munich company Theodor Hayden, told in the 1960s before his death that in the early 1930s he made a certain golden pot weighing about 10 kilograms by order of Albert Pitch, a major industrialist and director of the Elektrochemische Werke Munich. Pitch, a staunch Nazi and a supporter of Hitler, eventually received the high title of Wehrwirtschaftsführer, leader of the war economy, which was given to the heads of the most important enterprises of the Third Reich. Apparently, it was he who ordered the discovery in Lake Chiemsee. It is not clear how it ended up at the bottom of the reservoir, but it is known that on the shores of the lake, it was planned to build a monumental complex of the higher school of the NSDAP, the main and most elite Nazi university, which was to become the leading educational and scientific center of the entire Third Reich. It is possible that the pot, made in the image and likeness of the ancient Celtic vessels, could be intended for this organization. The Nazis knew a lot about this kind of artifacts with a semi-esoteric function. Vigango. Gohu is an ancient community in Kenya. Local skilled craftsmen carve hardwood figures called Vigango. They not only personify the honor of the dead tribesmen, but also embody the spirits of the dead. Vigangos are priced in the West as art and can be sold for a high price. However, stolen Vigangos carry a curse, and not for thieves, but for the Gohu tribe itself. Vigango must constantly make sacrifices, and they must never disappear from the place place where they are installed. Anthropologists have discovered that after several statues went missing, the tribe claimed that this fact was the cause of many years of drought and unexpected death of some members of the community. After several years of searching for the stolen Vigango, some of them were returned to Kenya. Moreover, they were brought to Goa in iron cages as a guarantee that Vigango would not be stolen again. Stone ram heads. Egyptian archaeologists are completing large-scale excavations on the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a 3,000-year-old road that connects the Karnak and Luxor temples. The 2,700-meter alley was built by Pharaoh Amenhotep III in the 12th century BC&S. Once it included more than 1,200 statues and was of great ritual significance. Over time, it was covered with sand and many of the statues were damaged. Excavations in the area of the Karnak temple have been going on since the 1940s with long breaks. In 2010, Egypt decided to tidy up the site and open it up to tourists. By 2020, the territory has been explored by 98%. By this time, many ancient artifacts were discovered here, including many of the lost ram-headed sphinxes. In ancient Egypt, the ram was a symbol of Amun-Ra, the patron saint of power, energy, and fertility. Installed next to the necropolises, the ram-headed sphinxes also acted as guards, silently calling for awe-inspiring silence. 3 more heads of rams were recently found. One of them is dedicated to King Amenhotep III. It has a horn, an eye, and a hole in which a cobra is placed. It is known that the crown of Amenhotep III had holes for a snake. The restorers will return the heads to their places, so that they again turn into mythological sphinxes located on both sides of the alley. Scientists call this ancient road an open-air museum, and now work on its restoration has entered the final stage. Soon, presumably in November, the opening ceremony of this monument will take place. Village 70 million years old. This story is rather dark, strange, and mysterious. Was an underground settlement 70 million years old really found in Belgium? And who lived in it? Let's start in order. A very religious artist, Robert Garcia, fascinated by the Bible and ancient civilizations, decided to build a fairy castle with biblical characters in the village of Eben Emael in the province of Henengoven, Belgium. It took Robert 15 years to build what he had conceived, and today the castle serves as a museum dedicated to the art of Garcia and his archaeological finds. Garcia Castle has 7 levels, 5 levels above the ground and 2 levels below the ground. The structure itself is 12 meters square on each side, supported by 4 towers at each corner. Garcia deliberately designed the castle to match ancient measurement systems. Each dimension in the tower is symbolic. The constructed masterpiece, Ebenezer, is a personification of humanity described in the Book of Revelations. 4 giant statues of biblical creatures are erected on the tops of the towers: an eagle, a bull, a lion, and a man. The interior of the castle is filled with biblical, archaeological, paleontological, and geological works by Garcia. So, during construction, while digging a pit under the foundation, Garcia's builders discovered a whole network of tunnels, more than 100 fossils, and what is most incredible, underground, not far from the construction site, cave structures similar to a village in a layer 70 million years old. In general, there are a lot of underground tunnels in Belgium, and some of them are so long that they have not yet been fully explored, while preserved remains of Mosasaur's skull were also found there. When Garcia explored the nearby underground flint mines and tunnels, he found many stone toys and figurines. Some look like stone dolls made of rounded flat stones with engraving. They all look very primitive and unlike what ordinary archaeologists are used to. Garcia scanned the underground village and discovered straight walls, tables, benches, and decorative ornaments carved into the walls. It looked like an ordinary village with streets, only this one was underground. Above the village are 3 layers of oceanic sediments, which indicates that Belgium was covered by the ocean 3 times. The layer where the underground village is located is 70 million years old. Of course, this is a controversial archaeological discovery because the cave village could have been excavated much later. It might be interesting for scientists these days to explore an ancient underground village in Belgium, but it's too late. By a strange coincidence, the village was destroyed by an explosion in a mine before it could be explored. Why was this opening closed? Why didn't anyone want to explore this place? And why were these cave structures clearly deliberately destroyed? A version suggests itself that this place was known to archaeologists, but apparently the finds did not fit into the modern officially accepted interpretation of ancient history, and when the village was accidentally discovered, it was simply destroyed. Petrified forest. In the Petrified Forest National Park of Petrified Trees in Arizona, USA, the temptation to profit from a souvenir is very great because pieces of ancient trees are lying around everywhere. However, tourists then return many of them back. Accompanying the parcels was desperate letters. They even published a brochure with the most interesting messages from souvenir lovers. After returning home, we first learned that our mother had kidney failure. As soon as we got home, we had an accident. There was a gas explosion in our house and we had nowhere to live. So please take this piece of wood back before we have any more misfortune. So the curses of different cultures act the same way. Various misfortunes begin to pour on the kidnappers. Do you think ancient artifacts can really bring misfortune and grief to the family? Or is it just a coincidence? Write your opinion in the comments below the video. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!